Hi everybody, Salty Stark here. Today we'll be going over the new addition to the Sunrise War Chronicle family, the Twisted Marsh raid. First, let's take a look at the boss, Kalia. First thing to note is Kalia will apply bleed and poison throughout the fight. This is very important to cleanse because she does increase damage based off of bleed and poison levels. The next thing to note is she will steal and reapply beneficial effects to herself. You want to avoid bringing beneficial effects like shields and invulnerability due to the fact that she can hit through them. The final thing to note is she will cleanse and reapply debuffs that were on her to the ally she is targeted, and will also give corrupted blood, which every time she autos, she applies 2 bleed and poison levels. So you want to make sure to cleanse that as well. Now, based off the core mechanics of the fight, let's look at vital units and team comps that you could potentially run to do this boss. Starting with the healers, Juno is a great unit for this boss because she can strip the beneficial effects that the boss steals, as well as the fact that she can cleanse all debuffs on a single unit. So if you have a unit that is guaranteed to catch all the debuffs, like a provoker or a single melee unit, and then she can strip all of them and make the fight a lot easier. Next up, Annabelle is a solid unit. She applies defense down, as well as she can be built to do a little extra damage. She heals and cleanses one harmful effect. This helps deal with the poison and bleed. The downside of these two units are they are costly to make and they are hard to pull. So some more free to play options are Lulu and Shushu. Lulu does a great job healing splash damage as well as cleansing one harmful effect, much like Annabelle does. And now let's take a look at Shushu. Shushu is probably the free-to-play MVP for this. Shushu will heal the HP of all allies, and then will also heal the lowest HP ally, but even more. Shushu also removes all debuffs off a target ally and applies immunity to team members with full HP. Please do note that the immunity is only for your summoner and units specific. It will not be received by the whole group. Moving on to some good viable melee DPS units. First unit we'll look at is Veligil. Veligil provides immunity to your team as well as does some solid DPS. He also removes beneficial effects on auto attacks and removes harmful effects when he provides his immunity. The next unit we're going to be looking at is Karambit. Karambit can be a good DPS for this raid due to his ability to hit through beneficial effects that your team might apply, such as defense up and shields and invulnerability. He also has defense penetrating damage to help do increased damage to the boss. The next unit we're going to look at is Jingzhe. Jingzhe is a good unit due to the natural tankiness of the warrior class. He also strips beneficial effects and consistently applies defense downs. Some more free-to-play options for melee units are Alan. Alan will provoke the boss, making him guaranteed to take all auto attacks as well as the debuff transfer. Alan will also have a chance to strip beneficial attacks when the unit is provoked. Alan's passive allows him to get tankier if HP is lower. The next unit we're going to look at is Helia. Helia is a healthy debuffer to help with the run. Helia is a healthy debuffer that applies plenty of debuffs. Please note though that you will want to make sure to look at your team comp beforehand to ensure that the massive amounts of defense downs and brands will not lead to the demise of your team due to the inability to cleanse all the debuffs when reapplied. Moving on to some viable rage units. The first one we'll be looking at is Argon. Argon is just a PvE beast due to his bonus DPS per harmful effect. Even when managing the amount of harmful effects you apply to this boss, he is still a solid unit to have. Next up is Brandia. Brandia is another PvE beast that helps maximize the amount of damage you put out due to her penetration damage and her damage taken up, as well as she does increase damage based off of harmful effects as well. Next up, we'll be looking at Sekhmet. Sekhmet is another solid unit due to her ability to strip beneficial effects the boss might have stolen during the fight. Another unit that can do this is Chiwu. Chiwu is another solid unit because he removes beneficial effects, he applies block beneficial effect, and does damage based off target's max HP, making him a reliable damage dealer. Some free to play options we're going to take a look at is going to be Cassie. Cassie is a good free to play option in situations where you might need Karambit due to the fact that she also hits through beneficial effects like shields and defense ups and important abilities. Next unit we're going to be looking at is Regal. Regal can be very useful in certain situations because he will replace potential attack ups and defense ups that the boss has stolen from your team and apply them as attack downs and defense downs. The next unit we're going to be looking at is Acelia. Acelia is another solid unit since she provides attack down, removes attack up, and applies defense down. Now let's get into the actual boss fight. So the boss fight will start with her doing the debuff transfer and applying corrupted blood and all the debuffs onto one of your units. Then she'll go into doing the circle phase. You want to dodge the circles because they apply bleed, and you want to make sure your team's topped off. Then you want to re-top off your team because she'll do an ability that does about 70% of all target HPs, and then she'll go into the snake phase. You want to avoid the snakes because if it hits a summoner, it applies a charge of Death's Dance. If she gets 3 charges, she casts Death's Dance, and it will apply damage taken up and mana cost up to all target units. Once this is over and you completed it successfully, she'll get into a stud phase and then do the 70% HP attack again. So you want to cleanse that back up, and then it goes into, once you get her to 7 bars of HP, she'll cast Forbidden Spell, which petrifies all your units, and she'll turn into a giant snake. You're gonna want to stack up on top of your units because to mitigate as much damage as you can. The target will only do as much damage. So she'll use Forbidden Spell. Once she uses Forbidden Spell, it'll petrify all the units. You want to stack up on top of your units because the snake will do damage based off of total amount of units in there. So it'll do less damage based off the amount of units it hits. Then it'll auto attack twice. It'll back up and do a swipe attack. You want to try to do your best to avoid the swipe attack because, as you can see here, it's stunned by units and did about half their HP. If that happens, just heal it back up and it's perfectly fine. She'll go back, start by using her debuff, or get rid of debuffs and reapply debuffs to enemies, and then go back into doing the circle phase. And basically that's like her main attack format, is just that. Once you get her to a low enough HP though, she'll go into this, what we call the shrine phase, where she'll go to one of these 3 shrines and you have to look around and dodge the attacks. If you get hit by this, it adds about 1.5 minutes to the duration because it'll petrify your units and go back and do it in another snake phase. And then back to where she cleanses and reapplies the debuffs, goes into another circle phase, and then she goes into a more dangerous kind of phasing here in a second, where she applies these slows on the ground that you have to dodge out of, and she'll go into a snake phase or go into doing the circle phase with these circles on the ground. So you want to be very careful of the circles because they do a lot of damage and slow your units. As you can see there, we lost a unit due to the amount of bleeds that got put on it, or the amount of poisons that got put on it, my apologies. And then it just goes back into targeting her and basically wash, rinse, repeat. Goes into another circle phase, dodge out of the circles. And then she goes back into applying the fence downs. You kind of want to group up whenever she applies the whenever the circles go in the ground though, because the movement speed down cannot be cleansed by Juno that well. So it costs a lot more mana if you're not grouped up, which makes this run a lot more dangerous. As you can see here, I'm trying to swap to maximize damage as quick as I can. And now that she applied the Corrupted Blood, I switch back to Juno to cleanse that really quick. And then we go back and try and do as much damage as we can. And there, here in a second, is the completed run. All in all, not very hard. As long as you make sure to follow those simple steps. Things to note and look out for. Some things to look out for when doing these runs is make sure to have your units on follow. You already know how my units on follow, so it's very likely that they take some unnecessary damage. If you can't dodge the circles, if you stand underneath her, it'll push you back and you only catch one circle because it won't push you into the next circle. There's also a chance during the battle that she'll do another shrine phase if you're not quick enough into getting her to about 3 bars. Some tips to help you throughout the fight is you will want your units on follow. Here I do not, so there's a good chance that my units will take some unnecessary damage. If you are having trouble with the circle phase, stand underneath her. She won't push you far enough back to where you'll get hit by the second circle, so you can just cleanse up and just take that initial damage. A big thing when doing this fight is you want to monitor your time. The phases in this fight take a long time if you get stuck in them. Like the snake phase takes about 30 seconds. The shrine phase takes about a minute. Any phase that she turns into a snake takes about another minute and a half. So you want to try to limit and do as much damage as you can to avoid time restrictions for her to increase damage. If this tutorial was helpful, please give the video a like. If you'd like more Summoner War content, please consider subscribing. Thank you, may your scrolls be bountiful, and have a nice day.